Gadget UK here again. As you can see, we're looking at a crate. I thought I'd just show this crate because in a recent video there I talked about using storage crates, and you can see this particular one is the one that holds my some of my Sinclair stuff. So I've got my +2 in here, ZX81, which is what I need, my tape deck. You saw that in a previous repair video there. I just used bubble wrap just to protect certain things within these boxes. But these are good, these are good for storing things in. You can fit quite a lot in there. I've got all my accessories, power supply, joystick, cables. That's an original one. I'll show you that in a future video. Actually, I repaired that. It's fine now, nice and clicky. So I've got the ZX81 out there. There's a few other things you can see. I've got a Commodore 64 board there. That'll be a future video. Interestingly enough, the fault with this one, I think, is going to be the colour RAM internal to the PLA on this one. I'm only going off the description of the video, saying it's like flickering colours and things. So that's my first thought. So this could be that one could be a particularly interesting video. What I'm not sure about is how this differs from the other PLA revision. I've got one of these that I think I took off that that board that was beyond. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same pin profile as it got the same number of pins. It looks like it's shrink dip or whatever, the same, but it's just whether it's got the same pins, whether they're in the same positions. And what I'm curious about is whether the video data lines are still there. I doubt they are. It wouldn't make sense for them to have left them on there, but they could have done. They could have just like internally put the colour RAM and just left the connections there. That, if I'm lucky. In that scenario, I might be able to just it's almost like piggyback. I may well be able to stick the chip on there and get it working that way. The alternative obviously is it's going to be just swap it out, and you can get those. They're about 15 quid each, so yeah, it's going to be a pain in the backside if I need to try and source one of those. But this may end up being another scrapped board again, I'm not sure, but anyway, that's a future video. I did recap this. There's just a single cap in there. I'll perhaps upload that video at the same time as this one. Really, there's nothing much to see. So the power supply has been recapped. But what we're going to do today with this ZX81 is, and I've got to thank Dave Curran over at Time Math Software. The RAM pack, as you saw when I did that tape, when I fixed that Philips tape deck there. As soon as you type on the keyboard there, just that small movement there on the back, you can see it just wobbles a bit. The smallest little wobble on this RAM pack, and your system freezes or resets, whatever. They were always like that, even from new, even when these were really, really tight fitting. They were just so flaky. You could just type it away and bang, it'd crash. I remember sitting there one evening. There were many evenings actually, but there was one particular evening where I sat typing some code with my dad. My dad was helping me. It was one of these code listings in Crash or something. That wasn't probably Crash, because Crash was the Spectrum, but ZX81 Sinclair user or whatever it was. There was a game listing, and it was I think it was like Hunchback or something. I think it was like a Hunchback clone. And we spent 2 or 3 hours typing this code and stuff, and we did save it at various points, but it kept crashing all the time. It was a nightmare. We eventually got it working. It was surprisingly underwhelming once we got it working, but it was alright. And it was the RAM pack. Like I said, the RAM packs, they just wobble for fun, and it's just a flaky design. This perhaps will be a separate video in its own right as well, because I think the thing I'm going to do with this is take this apart again and recap this, because as Dave over at Time Math Software again pointed out, I think it was, it's got the loads of caps in here, and I think it's got its own little switching regulator type stuff going on for the generating the supplies there for the different voltages for the RAM. So yeah, it's probably a good idea to recap that at the very least. But what I'm going to do today is, again, thanks to Dave, is take this apart, take out the I think there's 1K 4-bit chips, and there's 2 of them, I think, if memory serves. Take those out, and there should hopefully be a profile for a larger dip chip, maybe 28 or 32 pin, I can't quite remember. I'll have a look at the chip in a minute, and put a socket in there and stick a larger, I think it's a 32K chip, but you can then wire the additional address lines in such a way that you're making use of 16K, so you don't need this RAM pack. I might think about ways to disable that in future so that I can reuse this RAM pack. When I come to recap this, I want to be able to test it. The other alternative might be to have facility for both sockets on there. I'm not sure, so I can have the 2 for the 1K chips, 2 sockets for 1K chips, and the socket for the the other one. But I think the profiles sit over the top of each other, so what I might be able to do is cut a couple of the struts in the socket in order that I can have both sockets, and just give me a way of being able to swap around between the old RAM versus the new 32K chip, which obviously we'll all be using 16K on. So we'll take this out and I'll show you the chip that I'm going to put in there in a sec. So I've got the lid off there. You can see the composite mod. That was thanks to Jules Percullum in a previous video. Yeah, that looks like that's going to be the profile. Can you see we've got a larger, I'll just zoom a little bit, we've got a larger dip profile here, and then the small one here, that's going to be one of the 1K 4-bit chips, and I'm guessing that's going to be the other 1K 4-bit chip, hopefully. This might be the one that's only got one chip, I can't remember. I can't remember, there's different revisions of this with different number of chips and things on there. We'll have a look anyway. There's only a screw or two holding this in. Yes, it's that one there, and the one up here. And then I need to obviously disconnect the you know, the keyboard ribbon carefully, but it is a new ribbon, so it shouldn't break, hopefully. Yeah, there we go. So you can see, yeah, it's a 2114 NEC. I think they're NEC, these, aren't they? It looks like, yeah, and that's a 2114. So, and obviously the profile here you can see is larger. Quick look at the chip there. I'm not touching the pins, and I've got my anti-static wrist strap on. CXK58256PM-10, I think that is. I can't quite read that. You might be able to read that better than me. In any case, that's the chip I'm going to get on there, but we'll get a socket on first. Obviously, first thing I need to do is remove these two chips carefully and get a new socket on. But what I was suggesting would be possible, actually. I could probably, if I use two strips of inline, you know, turn pin, I can have a socket there, under there, and a socket there, so you could then revert it just by plugging the chips back in and removing the other chip. So the technique for removing these chips here, because that's the next thing I'm going to do, is obviously, you know, add a bit of solder and flux, and then just use my desolder pump. I do have a desoldering station, but for something like this, hopefully it should come off fairly quickly. And the iron I'm using is very low wattage, it's like 15 watt C-class, so hopefully it should be alright. Hopefully I shouldn't damage any of the pads on here, but they're really fragile, so it wouldn't surprise me if I struggle with this. I'm not sure. Let's just see how I get on. So that's about as near as I can get, I think. The conformal coating on these boards always amazes me. It just looks horrible. It's like this awful green stuff that's been stuck on there. I think we'll start with, I don't know if you can see that, yeah, hopefully you can, this pin down here. So we'll just add a bit of solder with flux. Let's get my desolder pump ready. And I'm going to be better off heating from pressing slightly from this side here with the iron, because that's where they're going to be snapped on. If I just try and turn this around a little bit if I can. Can you still see that? Yeah. Yeah, whilst that looked like it unblocked, it probably is still snapped on the other side. So heating from this side here and just putting a tiny bit of pressure like that, wiggle it across, that should make all the difference. I'm getting solder shards everywhere here. That's one of the unfortunate consequences of using a crap desolder pump, but we can brush that off. So I'm not going to bore you with the entire thing. I'll just go around there, do that all the way around, just double check the pins there, and then have a look on the other side just to make sure that the solder is free on both sides. Wiggle the pins just as I've shown in previous videos, just a tiny little bit, not a lot. You don't want to break them, you don't want to fracture, you know, stress them so they break. You just want to just try and snap them off the edge there. We'll get those two chips off. So a quick update here. I've shown all this stuff before, these techniques, but once you've desoldered all the solder off then, you can see the free, and you've done the flick test. Well, before you do the flick test, just do a little bit of this. Just select, you know, grab 3 or 4 pins and just pivot gently. You don't want to put any pressure, you don't want to snap them off, you don't want to break the board or scratch the board. Then do the flick test, and I found a few that were not completely free, so I'm going to try and tidy this. Turn this around. It'd be easier if I just disconnected the wires, but I figure I can do this without doing that really. It's only going to take a few minutes, so it's only taking 30 seconds to solder that. And then from this side I've put a little bit, there were a few pins here that when I did the flick test they weren't moving, so I put some desolder braid, which I'm going to need to do anyway because I'm going to need to unblock these holes here in a minute, and then just suck up the solder on those 3 pins there, and then repeat the process. You know, use the pliers on the other side very gently, and I could hear them snap, and then from this side just inspect the magnifying glass and just push each one just to make sure it's as free as possible. Just a little bit, not a lot. You don't want to damage the pin, you don't want to damage the board. And then if I just gently lift this now, you can see it moving at this side. You can see that? It's coming off. No pressure. I'm not forcing this at all. If any pressure is required, you will break pads and traces and things. Just try and gently move that cap out of the way there, and we'll just do the same thing here. Just gently. There you go. You can see it moving. Sorry, I'm not sure if that's on camera or not. There you go. You can see it moving. Yeah, it's coming up. It's no problems at all. Any resistance means you've got way too much solder holding a particular pin. It's just the reason it's coming out slowly is because the pins are slightly bent on, from when it was soldered on there. There you go. That's coming off, I think. There you go. All done. So we'll just repeat the process for the next one. Unblock these holes. Now I've not got the right size sockets. I think these are 18 pin. There's 9 pins on each side. I think 1, 2, 3. Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, there's 18 pins on these chips, and I've got everything but 18 pin. So I think I'm going to put 2 strips of turn pin and then 2 strips. So it will accommodate, either of those different RAM options there. But anyway, I'll finish that one off now, and then we're done. And again, I've mentioned it before, and you might think I'm crazy, but if your desolder pump is not working very well, just add a bit of WD-40 into it. Can you see that? It's just like instant clears it. It helps with the solvent. I think helps free the thing up so the solder doesn't actually block it. You tend to get more shards because it doesn't hold the solder like these pumps sometimes do, which is a good thing. But it just makes light work of doing something like this. So the second one came off super easy, and I've unblocked the holes there using the desolder pump. Now, the interesting thing with these boards, you can see, the traces are just, the copper with solder, a solder mask, if you like, solder applied over the top of the traces. So these are mega susceptible to particles of solder going on there, and when you're heating, desoldering these and stuff, you can easily join 2 traces up. So it's well worth closely, inspecting this before you do anything in regard to sticking sockets on, and looking for damage and stuff as well. And I think what I'm going to do now actually is get a bit of flux on there and just go over all those traces and just next to the traces with the solder braid there, just to make sure I've not got any particles, because as I've desoldered 1 or 2 of these pins from the top side here, I'm bound to have maybe joined a couple of them up. It's really super easy to do on these, and on the Spectrums as well. Some of the Spectrum revisions have got this same type of manufacturing process here where these traces are not covered. It's interesting. Can you see the ones down here? See how they're wavy? These were all hand drawn, I think. There was no, they didn't use stencils. They may have used stencils in places, but a lot of the traces there were hand drawn. So all done there with the solder braid. There are only a few places I needed to use it. I think there's like a connection down here where it was very close to the 3 traces there. It's got to be really gentle when I do this. And there were a few solder shards right across 3 traces there, but they weren't stuck on. It was just, I had to brush it off. They came off with the brush. So just gently go over this. Don't use any force because I don't want to rip any of these off, and then we'll get the sockets on there. So a quick macro there, mainly for my benefit actually, when I come to put this back together. If there's a problem, at least I can see where the traces are. Oh, there's a pin there that's blocked, you can see, bottom left, that socket. Yeah, I didn't realise that one's not been done yet. But you can see why you've got to inspect this. Some of these traces are really close. It'd be really easy to get a particle solder there. So I've got both of the 2114s back on there now. I figured that's a good test to do, just to make sure it still works. And then we can remove the 2114s and deal with the socket here. Now I think because we're using a larger chip, we're going to need to tie the upper, I think it's 32K I think, so we're going to need to tie the upper address bit low or high, it doesn't really matter which I guess. And then the additional address lines, I'm not sure this socket has got them wired on. I'm not sure. I just vaguely remember when I looked at Dave's blog there, he was running 3 wires for those upper address bits. And it doesn't matter where you, it doesn't matter where you connect them to. Obviously, you're going to need to connect them to the address pins on the CPU, I think. Yeah, I think. But it doesn't matter which order you connect them. Those 3 upper address bits, it doesn't matter the order, effectively. So just loosely connected up there now. If I just point you at the TV, and we'll just connect the power, which is the one nearest the front. Hopefully, yeah, there we go. So we've got the cursor up now. There's no indication there that the RAM's 100% right, but the fact it's come up there, shows me that there's a good level of confidence that it probably is okay. Because that's always a worry when you're removing these things. Temperature, just removing a chip. A bit too much heat. If you're struggling with 1 or 2 of the pins, you can damage the chip, and obviously I could have, ESD. Damaged one of these, So I'll have a look at his blog now to work out what the next step is with regards to the socket, because some of the pins are not going to want to go to the board. I don't think we might need to lift, bend one or two of the pins up, I think. So now I've confirmed that, the next thing to do obviously is get 2 strips of the turn pin socket here. So I've just soldered 1 pin and then just inspect it to make sure it's as flat and straight. It needs to be 90 degrees in relationship to the board, and I'll do the same thing for the other side. Just cut this down to exactly the right size, solder that on there, and then I think, just looking at his guide there, there's just 4 address lines. So what you can do, what he did, to make this reversible, easily reversible, he bent the 4 address pins up on the chip here, and then just attach wires and connect to 4 of the pins, I think 3 of the pins down here and 1 somewhere else. So that you could, you still have to desolder the pins and stuff as well as pulling your chip out, but you can then so literally just stick these chips back in and you're back to your standard 1K version. Okay, so we're on Super Macro there. You can see solder points are all right, but yeah, it's worth just inspecting, as I say, looking for particles of solder. I did see a few, actually. There's one there. They just always come away with the brush. There was something around here. Yeah, can you see this? Look at that. I wouldn't want that to be joining those 2 connections there, so it's not easy to do on camera. So just gently move that out of the way, and obviously just brush it off. But I think we're pretty much done now. I just need to get the chip on, I think. So with the chip, we bent out pin 1 here, and then I'm not sure how many pins this is actually. Yeah, the 3rd from top left here. Miss 2, the next one, miss 1, the next one. So those are going to be for the 4 address lines. So I think in theory now I should be able to remove the old RAM, stick this in, and just join those 4 wires up to the relevant places. So in Dave's guide there, what he's done is connected, what you need to do is connect to A10, 11, 12, 13. So looking at the Z80 pin out, you can see A10 is pin 40. And then on the opposite side there you've got A11, A12, A13. So those are the 4 wires that need to go to the 4 connections on the RAM chip there. So if we just zoom in, just so I can show you, it doesn't quite correspond to the version of the board that Dave's got now. I think that might be because it's a replica. Dave has got some replica ZX81 boards and things. He sells kits, so if you're interested in getting a ZX81 you can build your own. And they're really good. They look really good quality. So just testing on continuity. These are diodes here. Now he's got a resistor on his. Mine doesn't have a resistor. It's just like a block of diodes. So I thought I'd better just check this. So if we do that first one, A10, we'll just test the first pin there. This is the cathode, I think. Yeah, the cathode of that diode. Nothing. Next pin. There you go. So it's the second diode down. That's where I need to connect to there on the cathode side. On the A11, let's do this, the next one, I think is the one above. Yeah, A11 is the diode above, and A12 is the 3rd diode down, and A13, we skip one, it's the next one, I think. Yeah, let's just check, make sure none of those, yeah, that's right. So it's those first 3, skip one, and then the 5th one there, and it's this cathode side, so that's where the wire, I can just trim the wire, so you can't quite see that, can you? Just move it down a tiny bit here. If we just trim the wire so that it's just long enough to go across to the first 3 there, that'll be that one done. I might do it to the leave that top one because it's nearer to the other, and I just need to just join a wire from pin 1 there to the 4th one, and we're done. So yeah, it's a bit how you're doing here in terms of the soldering and stuff. I never really like soldering wires onto pins that are hanging out like that. It always looks a mess. You could put heat shrink or something around there, that might look tidier. And obviously if someone wanted to reverse this, revert to the original chips, they would need to just remove the chip and the 4 wires. So there we go. It could be tidier, like I said. I could have used some heat shrink. I don't really like joins and things like that on pins that are just bent out, but it's the best way to do this really, to make it revertible. And you can see we've got the pin 1 coming down here, going to the first diode, the cathode of that first diode, and then the other 3, we've got that one, miss 1, and that one, and these are just sort of folded like that there, so that will fit flat, fairly tidy. It's about as tidy as that's going to go. So again, just testing this loosely assembled. I'll assemble it, reassemble it properly in a sec. We'll just connect the power, let's see what happens, fingers crossed.
excellent. So I mean, there's no proof there we've got 16K, but it's a safe bet. So what I'll do now is reassemble it. I'll try and load that 49er, I think, because that's 16. That needs 16K, I think, that game. Well, the good news is it's loaded. Now, I took a gamble with it. I couldn't tell whether it was loaded or not. The things I do for this channel, I've just spent the last hour, I kid you not, messing around with volume levels, trying both sides of the tape. It's impossible to load it. I couldn't actually load it again after I did that last video, despite a number of tries. And even after recap the power supply, it still wasn't loading. And do you know what's made the difference? I'll just zoom out a little bit here, and this is going to be a question to you guys. Can you see the cassette deck? It's off the floor. I'll just show you something before we just test this now. Let me just think. Just disconnect the headphone. I'll rewind the tape. In fact, can you hear it? Can you hear the noise? Let me just put the camera near it. Can you hear? Put it on the floor. Hear that? As soon as you put it nearer to the floor, you get that massive hum. It's just... God knows what's underneath this conservatory. Probably like radium or something, you know, some sort of radioactive element. I've got no idea. So if you know what's going on there, please let me know. Interestingly enough, this is not the first time I've come across that strange behaviour of having something electrical near the floor. The other problem I've had is with the Spectrum Plus 2. I found that it was okay loading, but what was happening with that, it was interfering with the sound. So you had a hum. When this Plus 2 is on the floor, you had a hum through the audio. As soon as you lifted it off the floor and put it on a table, the humming went away. So, and that was what made me think, I'm going to put this off the floor actually. And it's loaded first time, instantly. I didn't even change the volume or anything, it's just loaded. So, there we go. So let's just try, press a key. I can't believe it's loaded. That's fantastic. It looks great on this TV. Let's redefine the controls. Yeah, so Q, A, Z, X, C. It's going to be incredibly difficult to play this, but it might not reset now. That's what I'm hoping, because obviously the power connector can be the source of problems. Did I press? Yeah, there we go. X. The power connector. If you've got like a loose power connector, that could cause recess and things. These keys are hard to use. I do remember when I had a ZX81 back in the day, I had there was like a stick-on rubber membrane you could get that was sort of akin to the 48K rubber membranes. You'll know what I mean. It was like you could get it as a kit and it just stuck on there, and that actually made it way better to use. I haven't seen any of those around actually. They probably haven't survived the test of time really with the sticky backing on there. I can't remember what you're supposed to do here apart from collect the nuggets, but yeah, this is the longest it's actually stayed working. There is a button C there, I think a key C to knock down a strut or something. I'm not sure you do it. That rat is awfully close. I wish it'd go away. I'll try and turn round and we'll try and see if we can knock a thing down. Oh, there we go. No, what was that? I don't know. Put something on the ground there. It's a bit strange. Maybe it keeps the rat occupied. I think that's probably the idea. Let's see if we can get that. Move across here. And then I think periodically we're supposed to go up to the surface and replenish, that pile or something, I don't know. I'm really not sure what those little piles do that you drop. I think that's a snake on the right hand side, isn't it? On the left hand side, sorry, those Zeds, are those snakes? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what happens when you touch them. Yeah, no idea, it's not done anything. And in fact the rat's not bothered by it. Let's get that nugget. I actually think this is probably the furthest I've ever got on this game. There's one nugget there. Is the rat gonna beat me? Yeah, damn thing. But anyway, yeah, you can see that's working, and it's a hell of a lot more reliable than it was in terms of, like I said before, you could just play this for a minute or two, and just the wobbling of pressing the keys quite hard. That's it. The RAM pack would, have a fit, and. I've done it. There you go. There's the exit there. I don't think I ever got off the first level. Good God. Makes me wonder what the hell I was doing as a child when I was playing this. So yeah, slightly different layout and stuff, more gold nuggets and things, but rinse repeat. So hopefully you found that interesting. I'll post a link to Dave's blog above. I'm not sure where that rat's gone.
yeah, you can sponsor Dave by Patreon. You can sponsor me by Patreon. Yeah, you can have no money left if you do that. Sponsor me first. No, you can sponsor Dave. Dave's got a really good blog there. It's well worth checking out. He does certainly a number of repairs each month. You know, 3 or 4 repairs generally. Sometimes less, sometimes more. But he's always got something interesting to check out on his blog. And as I mentioned earlier, you can get ZX81 repros. He's got some really nice boards and kits and things that he's created himself, I think, or perhaps he's worked with other people on. But yeah, check out his blog, check out his store there on his website, and thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.